Steve, what does it mean to you to go into the College Football Hall of Fame?
I'll tell you what, it's great. But my age, I'll be 83 years old come December, and I wish it could have happened about 40 years ago where I could enjoy it for that long. I'm going to get a nice big ring, and I know my days are numbered because I'm going to be 83 years old, but 40 years ago would have been fantastic. But I'm happy to be there now.
What was Bear Bryant like to play for?
I tell you what, Bear Bryant was one of the greatest coaches you can ever want to play for. During football season, practices, you hated his guts. But I tell you what, after you graduate, he's the best man you can ever have. If you needed anything, he would give it to you, or he would advise you. I wanted to go into coaching after I got out of pro ball. I called him, and he said, "You don't want to do this." He said, "Get you another job." So I enjoyed Coach Bryant. He's the greatest thing in the world.
You mentioned about wishing it was 40 years ago that this happened, but that's not to say you're bitter. Am I correct?
I can't hear. I'm sorry.
You're not bitter about this not happening 40 years ago.
Oh, no, I'm happy because I'm the fourth one under Coach Bryant that has made it. Now, the Jerry Claiborne played under Bryant. He was a senior in my freshman year, but he made it from BPI, from coaching. But then there's Bear Bryant, Bob Gaines, and Bay Pirelli and myself. And I played with both Gaines and Pirelli. So I'm happy to be here after so many years, as I said, but there's 5 of us connected to the Bear Bryant era that are now from Kentucky that are in the Hall of Fame.
Steve, can you talk about Bear and how tough he was, his toughness in practice and games, and some of the things he did?
I'll tell you what, he was tough. One day, I messed up on the field. Let me tell you this story. And Ermal Allen told me to go sit down in the middle of the field and right at the end of practice. And Coach Bryant didn't see it. So I quickly went in, took a shower, and put my clothes on because I know I was going to go to the office. So Al Weeman came in and said, "The man wants to see you." So I said, "Oh, my God." So I went in there, and I was standing, and the chair and the wall was behind me. And I walked in his office. He was putting on his tie. He said, "Now, let me tell you something, freshman." He said, "You come here with good credentials, but I'll tell you what." And he hit me with his forearm, lifted me off the ground. I hit that wall and fell in that chair, and I didn't get back up. I'll tell you. So he told me, he said, "Now I'm kicking you off the team." So I walked down the hallway, and I said to myself, well, I go to the University of Richmond because my coach at Fort Union Military Academy, he's now coaching there. So Bear said, "Come back." So he said, he said, "Next time you mess up on that field," he said, "I pointed the gate." He said, "You better be gone because my foot's going to be in your butt every step you take." So after that, he and I became real good friends because I didn't want to get kicked in the butt every step I took. And Ermal Allen was another good one. My junior year, after I played quarterback against Tulane, we beat them pretty handily here in Kentucky. And I went out to the Lexington Country Club with this girl I was dating, and her mother and father, and her brother and their sister. And, of course, I was a drinking age at that time, and we were at the Lexington Country Club, and I had my back towards the bar area, and I was drinking the bourbon Coke, and a hand reaches over, and I said, "Oh, my God, look up, it's Ermal Allen." He smelled that drink, and he said, "I'll see you Monday, freshman." I said, "Oh, my God." So about 20 minutes later, the waiter came by with a drink for everybody at the table. So I knew I was in trouble with Ermal Allen because he bought me a drink.
Steve, what do you think's going on now with Kentucky football? What's your impression of Stoops and what they're trying to do?
Well, I tell you what, I think this is one of the better coaching staffs here we've had in a long time. And I'm really impressed with his hiring of his assistant coaches, and I think this is going to be the future of UK football, with Stoops and his staff coaching. Now, each game, like, they get a little better. And I didn't get to see the last quarter of the South Carolina game. I fell asleep in my chair downstairs. And when it was over, I got up and said, "My God," I said, "I wish I could have seen what they did to come up and score those 3 touchdowns." So I think they're going to be a hell of a team in the future. I'm looking forward to it. Each year, now we win 4 games this year, I say we have a great season. And next year a little better. The third year, we ought to start really competing good. And I think we're doing it right now. South Carolina had a good team and playing them down there. And I think that we'll give Alabama a tussle, maybe for the first quarter or so. But after that, we'll start getting the numbers, and they'll start putting us down pretty good.
Steve, as compared when you played, and you played all those different positions, We make a big deal, deservedly so, about Randall Cobb and all of his versatility, but you were offense, defense. Did that hurt you as far as your national recognition? I know you got All-America, but as far as maybe getting into the Hall of Fame earlier?
It could very well have. Now, my junior year, my sophomore year, I played strictly end, and I want to say this, that Babe Pirelli was a quarterback, and Babe helped me in all ways to get notoriety in the SEC and even All-American, because I had a good start with Babe. In fact, I held a record for 40-some years as the most passes, touchdown receptions, and I had another one, most passes received, and Craig Geese recently just broke that one a couple of years ago. And I think I don't know if it hurt me or not, because like I say, my junior year I played quarterback, halfback, and every position a possible offense. I didn't play the interior line. I played every other position. Defense was the same thing. I played every play on defense. I punted, I kicked off, I run punts back, run kickoffs back. And I mean, I enjoyed doing it. I didn't want to sit in the sidelines and watch the other guy. I wanted to get in the action. And that's why I liked to play in all positions like I did my junior year.
Were Lombardi and Landry radically different from Bear to play for?
No, I tell you what, Lombardi and Bear were exactly the same type coaches. They knew what kind of psychology to use on you to play, and their coaching techniques were exactly the same. Even at the end of practice, we used to have to, with Green Bay, run about 10 yards and then come back and run some more, run a play. And Lombardi used to do the same thing. So they're exactly the same kind of coaches.
What about Landry?
Landry wasn't bad, but he was kind of calm. He didn't, get down the action like Bear and Vince used to do. And but I enjoyed playing with Tom. Like Tony said, I played on three greatest coaches ever lived: Bryant, Lombardi, and Landry. And that was the greatest thing. That's one of my big claim to fame, as I always say.
Tony just listed off your kind of impressive credentials after you finished playing football.
I'm sorry, what? Sorry?
Tony just listed off all your impressive credentials after you finished playing football. Where does this honor kind of rank among all the others?
Oh, this is the greatest in the world. Up until this one, I was in 5 Hall of Fames, and this one is the 6th one. It's a big one. Now, I got a letter in a schedule of what we'll be doing in New York, and on the cover sheet, it said that the $4.8 million that players, 4.8 million players that had gone through the program, only one more or percentage of 100 are in the Hall of Fame. There aren't too many, and he said that it's less than 1%. And I had made one less than 1% since I took a psych course over here at UK. No, I'm not the smartest kid in the world, but I got my degree finally.
You talked about having played for Lombardi and Landry and Bear. But how did they shape you as a man? How did it benefit you in your life as you became an adult, you served in the military? How did that help you in your life?
Well, I tell you what, Bear Bryant was the first one I played for, and he made us do things that benefit ourselves. And he would try to make everybody go to church on Sundays, but a lot of guys didn't, but I did. Anyway, he was that kind of fella. He sent a letter home to your mother and father every now and then, tell them what you're doing and how you're doing. And it really helped me because I was kind of a little wild when I first got here. But then Bryant really calmed me down and everything, so I was real happy over that.
Steve, you had to be tough mentally, obviously, to play for Bryant and for Lombardi. How did that help you when you became a U.S. Marshal?
Well, I tell you what, they learned the techniques of how to handle people, because they sure did handle me, I know that. Now, Bear Bryant was a great one. I've seen him, Bob Gaines, when I was a freshman. Bob was a junior, I guess. And I saw Bear Bryant pick him up, and Bob weighed a good 270 pounds. I saw Bear Bryant pick him up by the seat of his pants in Jersey and throw him about 3 yards. And I seen him do it a lot of times. And he'd get right out there. We were practicing kickoffs one day, and in receiving kickoffs, you had to block a certain man. And we had a guy named Ted Kearns. He went down, and we practiced it twice. He screwed up both times. And Bryant took off and gave him a body block. And I mean, it knocked Ted Kearns a long way. But that's the way Brian was. He got down in the action. And every time he'd do somebody do something wrong, he'd start running, we'd holler, toot, toot. And everybody start looking around because, you know, Bear was coming after you. And that's the honest to God truth. I'm not lying. Bear Bryant would get down and right down there and play with you. And he'd come and block you, buddy, and bust your goods.
What do you make of the fact that if Mark Stoops did that today, he'd be hauled out of here and handcuffed?
Oh, yeah, it's altogether different today, I'll tell you that, because back then, you know, the parents and whoever else, they didn't care about what you did at the university. But today, like you said, you couldn't get away with all that stuff. They'd put you in the penitentiary.
So Steve, did anybody ever knock Bear? Did anybody ever, when he got out in practice, did anybody ever knock him down?
I doubt so. I never saw it because he was rough. Bear was a young fellow when he was here, and he was rough as the devil, I'll tell you. But great coach, one of the greatest ever lived.
You mentioned that you couldn't do those things. Coaches today couldn't do what they did when you played. Do you long for that to come back? Do you think that's what's missing?
I don't exactly think that's what's missing, but I believe they could sometimes get in there and knock heads and with them a little bit. But I don't think they go too far this day and age because people would complain about it, and I would say sometimes the press does it too. So yeah, I don't think they get away with it.
Steve, these Kentucky kids over here are trying to climb the SEC ladder, get to a big bowl. Can you talk what it meant to you to be able to play in the Cotton Bowl?
I tell you what, it was fantastic. My freshman year, they played in the Sugar Bowl. Freshmen were not eligible. But you know, when you get in high school, I always wanted to go to a big school and to play in the bowl. And I had no aspirations of making All-American, but I got to Kentucky, got to play in the Cotton Bowl. And you know, my senior year, we were 7-3. And at that time, Coach Bryant used to let the team decide whether they wanted to go or not. So we used to eat either or meals down the cafeteria, and he came in one day and had a telegram in his hand. And he said, okay, gentlemen, he said, like, we got a telegram here, we got an invitation to the Gator Bowl. And so he let the two captains get up and decide whether he wanted to go, and Bear Bryant left the room. So Tommy Atkins, who was our center, he got up and said, anybody, any centers want to go? And nobody raised their hand. So Corral said, how many guards want to go? And nobody raised their hand. So they called Bear in and told him no, and boy, he was really hot. He left the room, he turned around and said, don't forget we have spring practice. And I said, thank God I'm a senior, I don't have to go through that because I know what they were going to go through. And being a senior, I didn't use my common sense. I should have got up and said, look, guys, I'd like to go to 2 bowls before I leave the university. Point to a freshman and say, how many have you been to? Sophomore, how many have you been to? And I hope that I could have persuaded us to go to the Gator Bowl because, like I say, I would love to go and come out of college and say, well, I played in 2 bowls. But, you know, it's hard to do now. But I hope that Coach Stoops, and I guarantee you in about 4 years from now, we'll have a great, great team at Kentucky, back to Bear Bryant age.
Steve, why do you think Kentucky has not won all these years?
Why? Well, I tell you what, I can't really put a figure on it, but I believe that our coaching staff hasn't been as good as they are now. I mean, at each position. Here you got Brown, the offensive coordinator, and I forget the name, the defensive coordinator. But I think Coach Stoops is going to take over and help more with the defensive assignments. And I think in a couple of years from now, we'll be good. And like I say before, I don't think we had the head coaches who had the attitude that they do now. And I think we got a good nucleus of assistant coaches.
Steve, you hear about all these kids taking money for autographs and boosters giving them money and money they're not supposed to be getting. How much of that was going on in your day compared to now, and how do you kind of feel about stuff like that?
I'd like to answer that. But I tell you what, we had an investigation here. SEC had a big one. And 2 of our guys got kicked off the team their senior year, Gene Donaldson and Lukowski, because they got clothes from somebody that come to UK. And I had received a couple of clothes and a couple breeches. Oh, let me tell you about breeches. I came down here and never heard the word breeches, didn't know what breeches were. So this guy told me, he said, come on, he said, I'm going to buy a couple of pair of breeches. I said, okay. So we go down there, Angelo Ringo's, and he measures me up. Oh, breeches are pants. Anyway, we had this investigation, and this was before that happened. And the gentleman swore in, and good old Catholic boy I am, I never told a lie until then. They asked me if I had ever received anything, gratuity, clothing, or something. I said, no. And then that asked me a couple other questions, why I came to Kentucky and all that stuff. And like I say, I lied, and I stayed there 4 years.